Hey, gentlemen. So, carbohydrates are massively anabolic, and that is because they actually contain large amounts of glucose. That's the one sugar source that actually can be used by every cell in the human body and is used by every cell in the human body. But it's glucose is much more than just a way of converting a carbon structure into ATP. It's actually something that affects every cell in the human body with regards to the energy homeostasis and the cell signaling inside each and every cell. So, when it comes to muscle building and muscle growth, glucose is essential because of several reasons. The first being that it's actually a signal for high energy inside the muscle fiber. So when you have high amounts of glucose pouring into your muscle fiber, that sends out a signal, a cascade of signals that tells the muscle fiber that energy supply is ample and there's lots of resources for that muscle fiber to grow because energy is so plentiful. So, by doing so, a lot of things happen. One of the things is that the mTOR slash AMPK, which is the adenosine monophosphate kinase, those two pathways are always talking to one another. And the adenosine monophosphate kinase, the AMPK, its function is to sense the energy status of the muscle fiber. So if glucose is low, if ATP is low, if glycogen content is low, adenosine monophosphate kinase upregulates and it shuts off the mTOR pathway. And obviously we need the mTOR pathway to be working because it is through the mTOR pathway that we get protein synthesis and upregulation of protein synthesis, and both in quantity and efficiency. So if energy levels are down, then the mTOR pathway suffers and the adenosine monophosphate kinase is upregulated, blocking the mTOR pathway. Another interesting thing is that they actually found out if you have low levels of glycogen, which basically means if you work out and you don't eat carbohydrates, glucose, your glycogen levels will start to come down. And when that happens, your myogenic regulatory factors, the MRFs, which control hypertrophy in the bigger scale, actually start to downregulate while you are at rest. So just sitting around, it's been said that you actually grow when you rest, which is actually true. You don't grow when you work out, you grow when you're resting, when you're recuperating. So when you're resting, if you have low levels of glycogen, then your MRFs, your myogenic regulatory factors, will be downregulated, and that will obviously hamper hypertrophy. Another thing that glucose does so well is that it works in parallel with insulin. So if you want to really drive up insulin, you need lots and lots of glucose, right? That's the lesson learned from diabetes. Glucose and insulin work together. Actually, you can make an evolutionary argument, that insulin was invented to control glucose. It really responds to the glucose levels. The beta cells in the pancreas, they sense glucose and they dump out insulin to try and bring down glucose and to try and absorb glucose, or make it so that the muscle fibers, primarily the muscle fibers, actually soak up the glucose so that its levels can come down in the bloodstream. So glucose and insulin work together, and by doing so, they actually upregulate together a lot of the pathways that lead to growth, like the AKT pathway, the PKC, the protein kinase C. A lot of those pathways, they work together to upregulate when they are both high in the bloodstream. Another thing that high glucose levels can do for you is that high glucose levels actually cause an enzyme that lives within the mitochondrial membrane, the outer membrane, which is the Mondo-A MLX. And that enzyme senses the increase in glucose 6-phosphate, which is in the glycolysis pathway. So glucose comes in the cell, it is phosphorylated, and it's converted to glucose 6-phosphatase. And that enzyme that lives in the mitochondrial membrane actually senses that there is a lot of glucose coming into the muscle fiber, and it doesn't actually upregulate itself. Rather, it uncouples from the mitochondria and transports itself to the nucleus and binds to DNA and starts to transcript a lot of genes. Some of those genes are growth genes, are genes that are involved in muscle growth. So again, that's another positive for glucose. And lastly, glucose actually has a very positive effect on P300, which is a HET, which means that it is an enzyme that actually upregulates acetylation in the histones. So in the tails of the histones, inside the chromatin, you have the DNA wrapped around the histones, and if we want to read the DNA, if we want to translate growth genes, if we want to upregulate those growth genes, we need to acetylate the histone tails so that the unpacking of the DNA can occur, and the transcription factors can come in, assemble with DNA, and transcript said genes. So P300 is one of the acetyl transferases, which means that it transfers acetyl groups to the histone tails and allows the DNA to be read by the growth factors, by specifically the myocyte enhanced factor 2, the MAF2, which is very, very crucial for hypertrophy. It's one of the most crucial MRFs, myogenic regulatory factors, that we have. So I know this is a lot of information. What I want you to come to embrace or to leave this video knowing is that glucose is very good. You should embrace that. I know that we live in an era where glucose gets a bad rap. You know, we have a lot of the carnivore diet people and the ketogenic groups, and all of that is fine. Those are very valid nutritional standpoint views. Glucose can be very harmful, except if you are an athlete, except if you are actually resistance training with effort and intensity, and then you actually need a lot of glucose. And it is not bad. At that point, it's not bad. Quite the contrary. It's actually very good and will help you massively in growing muscle. The caveat is that you actually should opt for the high spiking glucose sources and the fast absorbing glucose sources. So those low glycemic carbohydrate sources are actually trash. They only work on bodybuilders that take massive amounts of steroids. That's the only reason why they work. If you really want to grow and you are natural, you need to opt for the fast-acting carbohydrates, the fast-acting sugars, stuff like mashed potato. Mashed potatoes are actually very, very fastly absorbed. They spike glucose levels and they increase insulin a lot, and that leads us to that cascading of effects inside the muscle fiber that signal the muscle fiber that it's okay, you can grow. So I hope you like this video, and I will see you in the next video. Hey fellow warrior, thank you for watching that, and if you liked that video, you would also like to know that I've made my workouts and meal plans completely available for free. All you need to do is go to my website, which the link will be in the description of this video, and pick your poison, whether if you want to gain muscle or lose fat and look completely shredded. You can pick whichever style of workout suits you better, and you can pick the meal plans according to your goals. Don't miss out on the opportunity, as for now they are completely free.